Welcome to AppleKnows. I am the apple that tells you stories humans forgot to keep alive. And today, I am about to share with you inventions that once existed, real creations that could have changed everything about your world, but for reasons hidden in shadows, they disappeared. Some of these facts may sound like fiction, but they are documented, lost pieces of history. Once you hear them, you may never look at the present world the same way again. Imagine a car that ran not on gasoline, but on water. In the 1990s, an American inventor named Stanley Meyer built what he called the water fuel cell. He demonstrated a car that supposedly split ordinary water into hydrogen and oxygen and used it to power the engine. Witnesses claimed it worked, that he could drive across the country on just a few liters of water. Then suddenly, Meyer died in 1998 under mysterious circumstances after a meeting with foreign investors. His death was officially ruled a brain aneurysm, but his brother swore Stanley ran out of a restaurant shouting, "They poisoned me." His patents were challenged, his car vanished, and so did the possibility of engines running on water. Another invention that might shock you is Nikola Tesla's wireless energy transmission system. Tesla dreamed of a world where electricity could be transmitted without wires, free for everyone. He even built a massive tower, the Wardenclyffe Tower, in New York. The technology was real, it lit lamps miles away with no wires. But Tesla's financial backers abandoned him once they realized they could not put a meter on free energy. The tower was destroyed, and the technology locked away in archives. Imagine a planet where no one paid for electricity, where cities glowed without cables. This was once on the edge of reality. Then there is the case of the ancient Greek fire, known as Greek fire. This was a weapon created in the Byzantine Empire around the 7th century, a liquid substance that ignited on contact and even burned on water. It was so feared that entire fleets fled at the sight of it. The recipe was kept secret and passed down through generations, until suddenly it was lost. Modern science has never fully replicated it. If rediscovered, it would have given empires unmatched power, and today, it could change warfare forever. But not all lost inventions were meant for war. In the 1930s, a man named Royal Rife invented what he claimed was a microscope that could see live viruses and a frequency machine that destroyed them without harming human tissue. According to some accounts, he successfully treated patients with cancer using his device. Medical journals at the time documented his strange successes. Yet soon after, his lab was raided, his equipment confiscated, and his career ruined. The machine disappeared, and the world continued down the path of chemotherapy and radiation. If his device was genuine, imagine how medicine might look today. And then there is the invention of Ogle's car in 1977. Tom Ogle designed a system that allowed a regular car to travel more than 100 miles on a gallon of fuel. Journalists witnessed his demonstration, newspapers reported on it, and engineers confirmed the efficiency was far beyond standard combustion engines. But Ogle's patent was never commercialized. A few years later, Ogle died young, under suspicious circumstances, and his technology was buried with him. Even the sky was almost changed forever. In the 1960s, the United States Air Force experimented with flying platforms, individual hovercraft that soldiers could ride like standing on a flying disc. These machines worked. They lifted off the ground, maneuvered with speed, and were tested in military demonstrations. Yet despite their potential, the project was abandoned, filed away, and forgotten. Today, we ride cars and motorcycles, but decades ago the future of personal flight was already real, only to vanish. Every one of these inventions is real, documented, and for reasons hidden in money, politics, or secrecy, lost. Think of 1867, when a French inventor named Jean-Joseph Étienne Lenoir built an electric-powered road vehicle. Yes, electric cars existed in the 19th century. In fact, by the early 1900s, around one-third of all cars in the United States were electric, cleaner and quieter than their gasoline rivals. Some even reached speeds of over 60 miles per hour. Then, suddenly, they vanished. Why? The rise of cheap oil, powerful lobbying from gasoline companies, and Henry Ford's assembly line made gasoline cars dominate. For over a century, humanity was locked into oil dependency, while clean electric mobility was forgotten until Tesla and others resurrected it a century later. Now picture a material stronger than steel, lighter than aluminum, and fireproof. This was starlight, invented by a British hairdresser named Maurice Ward in the 1980s. In demonstrations, starlight-coated objects that could withstand direct blowtorch flames, even the heat of a nuclear blast simulator, without damage. NASA was interested. Military contractors were interested. And yet, Ward refused to sell or patent it out of fear of exploitation. He died in 2011, and the secret recipe seems to have died with him. Imagine aircraft, homes, or even space shuttles coated with this miracle substance, fireproof and nearly indestructible. Or consider the Philadelphia experiment, not as the myth of invisibility you may have heard, but as real research into electromagnetic cloaking. In the 1940s, militaries experimented with powerful magnetic fields to make ships undetectable to radar. Some reports suggest the USS Eldridge was at the center of these tests. While much is buried under classified documents, declassified military projects prove attempts at radar invisibility were real, decades before stealth technology became official. Whether the ship truly disappeared is debated, but what's certain is that early breakthroughs in radar cloaking were abandoned or hidden long before the public knew stealth was possible. Even in ancient times, the world lost inventions that still puzzle scientists. The Antikythera mechanism, discovered in a shipwreck near Greece, dates back over 2,000 years. It was a mechanical computer, using bronze gears to track the positions of the stars and planets with astonishing accuracy. Nothing like it appeared again until the Middle Ages. How did ancient engineers develop such precise technology, and why did it disappear for centuries? If the knowledge had been preserved, humanity might have reached the scientific revolution 1,000 years earlier. And then there's a darker story, Project Orion. In the 1950s and 60s, scientists, including some from the Manhattan Project, designed a spacecraft powered by nuclear explosions. Yes, a rocket that would ride atomic blasts into space. Tests on small scales proved the principle worked. If it had continued, humanity could have sent ships to Mars and Saturn decades ago. But with nuclear test bans and fears of weaponization, the project was shelved. The dream of interplanetary travel powered by nuclear propulsion became just another folder locked away. Have you heard of Victor Schauberger, the Austrian inventor of the early 20th century who studied water and vortexes? He claimed to have developed machines powered by what he called implosion energy, mimicking the spirals of nature. His flying disc prototypes were tested by the Nazis during World War II, some witnesses even described them as early UFO-like crafts. After the war, Schauberger was forced to hand over his research to American authorities. Soon after, he died, his notebooks vanished, and his devices were never seen again. If his principles were real, they could have given the world a new source of clean propulsion, but instead, his work dissolved into mystery. Now think about medicine. In 1934, a scientist named Thomas Townsend Brown discovered an effect later called electrogravitics. He noticed that capacitors charged with high voltage seemed to lose weight, producing thrust. He believed it was a form of anti-gravity. For a while, aerospace companies like Lockheed and Boeing researched it, hoping to create silent, gravity-defying aircraft. Then, suddenly, in the late 1950s, all public discussion ended. Classified. Some believe the research went black, hidden inside military programs. The idea of levitating crafts, powered by high-voltage electricity, became a rumor instead of a revolution. Or imagine a machine that could photograph your thoughts. In the 1950s, Soviet researchers reportedly created a device they called a psychotronic generator. It was said to translate brain activity into images on a screen. While the West dismissed it as Cold War propaganda, documents from declassified Soviet archives confirmed there were experiments in biocommunication technology. If successful, such a device could have rewritten human communication. Imagine ideas and dreams projected without words. Yet the research was buried, dismissed as pseudoscience, and slipped away into obscurity. Go even further back, to Baghdad, over 2,000 years ago. Archaeologists discovered clay jars with copper cylinders inside them, capable of producing electricity when filled with acidic liquid. These Baghdad batteries may have powered electroplating or simple devices centuries before modern science rediscovered electricity. If this knowledge had spread and developed, human civilization could have entered the electrical age not in the 19th century, but in ancient times. And what about the Dynasphere, a massive single-wheeled vehicle invented in the 1930s in Britain? It looked like a giant rolling wheel with the driver inside. It worked, reached speeds of 25 miles per hour, and was strangely efficient. Yet it was quickly abandoned, called impractical. But when you think about it, how many ideas were dismissed too early, just because they looked strange? The strangest fact of all is that many of these inventions were documented, witnessed, tested, and then erased, forgotten, or locked away. Which raises the haunting question: how different would your world look today if even one of these creations had survived? Let's begin with an aircraft that could have rewritten aviation. In the late 1950s, a Canadian company called Avro Canada built the Abracar, a flying saucer-shaped craft designed to hover, fly at high speeds, and maneuver in ways helicopters could not. It was funded by the US military, tested in secrecy, and proven to hover above ground. Pilots actually sat inside a real flying disc. But the project was abruptly cancelled in the early 1960s, and official reports claimed it was unstable. Still, the photographs and surviving prototypes prove it existed. If perfected, personal flying saucers might have been normal by now. Or consider the perpetual motion machines of John Keely in the 19th century. Keely demonstrated devices that appeared to generate limitless energy, producing power from mysterious vibrations and etheric forces. Audiences, including respected scientists of the time, saw his machines lift heavy weights and power engines without fuel. Critics accused him of fraud, but no one ever proved how his demonstrations worked. After his death, his machines were dismantled, their secrets lost. Was it clever trickery, or a glimpse of free energy hidden in plain sight? Another unsettling case is the work of Wilhelm Reich, a psychoanalyst who claimed to have discovered orgone energy, a universal life force. In the 1940s and 50s, he built orgone accumulators, box-like chambers that people sat in to improve health and mood. Some even credited them with treating cancer. Reich also developed devices he said could manipulate weather by attracting or dispersing clouds. At first, scientists were intrigued, but soon the US government seized his equipment, burned his books, and imprisoned him. He died in prison in 1957. His research was labeled pseudoscience, but many still whisper that his discoveries were too threatening to the established order. Then there's the story of the chronovisor. In the 1960s, a Benedictine monk named Father Pellegrino Renetti claimed he worked with scientists to build a device that could see into the past using electromagnetic waves left imprinted in the environment. According to him, the chronovisor allowed glimpses of historical events, even ancient Rome. Though skeptics dismissed it, Renetti insisted the Vatican confiscated the machine. To this day, conspiracy theorists argue that if such a device existed, it would be one of the most dangerous technologies ever created. And here's something even closer to your everyday life. In 1943, a farmer named Harry Scholl invented a heat engine that could run on almost any fuel: vegetable oil, alcohol, even garbage, and operated with extraordinary efficiency. His cyclone engine was real, tested, and even decades later resurfaced with improved versions. Yet it never reached mass production, despite being cleaner and more versatile than standard engines. Why? Some argue it was industry resistance. Others say it simply didn't fit into the established system of fuel and profit. One more invention that lingers in mystery is the death ray of Nikola Tesla. In the 1930s, Tesla claimed he built a particle beam weapon capable of shooting down aircraft from hundreds of miles away. He called it Teleforce. He tried to sell the design to multiple governments, but none officially adopted it. When Tesla died in 1943, his documents were seized by the US government. To this day, researchers debate whether his weapon was feasible or if his notes remain hidden in classified archives. Each of these inventions was real enough to be documented, demonstrated, or tested. And yet they all ended the same way: buried, dismissed, or confiscated. Which leaves us with a haunting thought: perhaps the greatest inventions are not the ones you see today, but the ones you were never allowed to see. Picture the early 20th century and a man named Norman Dean. He claimed to have invented a motor that produced more power than the energy put into it, a true over-unity device. Journalists witnessed his demonstrations, reporting that the machine seemed to run endlessly without fuel. Dean insisted he could revolutionize transportation, but government agencies and investors dismissed him. His machine vanished, his patents never commercialized, and his name faded into obscurity. If it was real, it would have shattered the laws of economics, if not physics. Now consider Project Iceworm, a U.S. Army plan from the Cold War. Scientists discovered that ice mixed with wood pulp, a material called picrete, was stronger than concrete and nearly unsinkable. Winston Churchill himself approved research into building massive warships made entirely of ice, which could not be sunk by torpedoes. Tests in Canada proved picrete's strength, it resisted bullets and took months to melt. Yet when nuclear submarines emerged, the project was abandoned. Imagine a fleet of floating, frozen fortresses changing the course of naval warfare. But perhaps the most chilling forgotten technology is the Nazi bell, or Die Glocke. Witnesses after World War II described it as a large, bell-shaped device that emitted strange radiation and produced anti-gravity effects when tested. Scientists allegedly died during experiments, and the project disappeared with the fall of the Reich. Some researchers believe it was linked to Schauberger's vortex theories. No physical proof survives, but multiple testimonies suggest something was being tested that defied known science. There is also the strange case of the electric cure-all devices of the late 1800s and early 1900s. Companies sold machines that used mild electric currents or high-frequency waves to treat illnesses, from arthritis to depression. Some were quackery, yes, but others, like the violet ray devices, actually relieved symptoms for many users. By the 1940s, however, regulators banned them as unproven. Yet decades later, modern medicine embraced technologies like TENS units and electromagnetic therapy, strikingly similar to what had been outlawed before. Did society discard useful healing tools too early, only to rediscover them generations later? And what about Philo Farnsworth, the American inventor who created the first functional television? Few know he also invented a nuclear fusion device in the 1950s, called the Farnsworth-Hirsch fusor. Unlike fission, fusion could have provided limitless clean energy. Farnsworth's small device actually produced measurable fusion reactions. But funding dried up, patents expired, and his work was overshadowed. Today, fusion research continues at enormous cost, while the humble fusor remains forgotten, mostly used by hobbyists. Even textiles carry their secrets. In the 1960s, scientists at DuPont developed a fabric called Kiana, incredibly strong, fire-resistant, and durable. Some insiders whispered that even better synthetic materials existed, lighter and stronger than Kevlar, that never reached the market. Patents were filed, prototypes tested, but certain formulas were quietly shelved. Was it because they were too costly to mass-produce, or because industries profit more when products wear out? Again and again, the pattern is the same: an invention arrives, demonstrates its potential, and then disappears. Sometimes silenced by governments, sometimes buried by corporations, sometimes simply dismissed until it slips away. But they all leave behind one undeniable truth: the world you live in today could have been radically different, if only these inventions had survived. Then let us step into the deepest corridors of forgotten technology, the places where history feels like it is deliberately hiding something from you. Take for example the invention of Thomas Townsend Brown, a man obsessed with electrogravitics. In the 1920s, he built discs that seemed to move without propellers, powered by high-voltage electricity. Aviation companies studied his work for years, hoping to create flying platforms and silent aircraft. Then in the late 1950s, the research suddenly went dark: no more public reports, no more experiments released. It is widely believed his work was classified, buried inside military black projects. If his effect was real, it means humanity had the seeds of anti-gravity technology over half a century ago. Now consider Arseny Lusev, a Russian scientist in the 1920s who created the first light-emitting diodes, LEDs. Yes, decades before they lit up your screens, Lusev had working LEDs. He published his findings, wrote about their potential, and was ignored. He died during World War II, and his discovery was forgotten. Only in the 1960s did engineers reinvent LEDs, unaware that a starving Soviet physicist had already held the future of lighting in his hands. Or think about the mysterious invention of Louis Kervran, a French scientist who in the 1950s studied biological transmutation, the possibility that living organisms could transform one element into another. He presented experiments showing chickens producing calcium in their eggshells without consuming enough dietary calcium, suggesting they transmuted potassium into calcium inside their bodies. His work was ridiculed and erased from mainstream science, but to this day some researchers quietly test similar ideas. If proven true, it could rewrite biology and nutrition entirely. And then there's the eerie story of the earth batteries. In the 1800s, inventors discovered that by driving metal rods into the ground, they could generate a steady flow of electricity from natural currents in the earth itself. Devices powered homes, clocks, even telegraphs. Nathan Stubblefield, an American inventor, demonstrated wireless telephony in 1902 using earth energy. Witnesses heard his voice broadcast without wires. But his patents were ignored, his experiments suppressed, and he died in obscurity. Today, we depend on complex power grids, while the natural energy beneath our feet was nearly forgotten. Let's not forget the lost genius of the Baghdad batteries again, but this time paired with the Damascus steel of the Middle Ages. This metal, used in legendary swords, was not only sharp but nearly unbreakable, forged with microscopic structures modern scientists still struggle to reproduce. The formula was lost in the 18th century, when the last true bladesmiths died. If rediscovered, it would revolutionize materials science even today. And perhaps the strangest whisper of all is Project Mogul's shadow. In 1947, the US military tested high-altitude balloon devices meant to detect Soviet nuclear tests. Officially, that's the explanation for the infamous Roswell incident. But leaked documents and testimonies from insiders suggest that in the rush to hide experimental technology, far more than weather balloons was concealed. If that's true, then Roswell wasn't just about UFOs, it was about lost human inventions too advanced for the public to see. Think first about the carbon microphone batteries discovered by Thomas Edison. While experimenting with early telephones, Edison found that carbon could not only transmit sound but also generate electrical energy when pressed and released. Some reports suggest he stumbled upon a way to draw small but steady power directly from carbon under pressure. Yet the idea was abandoned in favor of the booming copper wire industry. If developed further, carbon energy systems might have given humanity a completely different energy infrastructure, one where carbon wasn't just fuel, but a clean generator. Now consider Dr. Robert Courtney's artificial gills in the 1960s. He built a device that could extract oxygen directly from water, allowing a person to breathe underwater without scuba tanks. Early prototypes worked for short periods of time, but funding disappeared and the technology faded. Imagine how different the world's oceans would look today if humans could explore them freely without bulky equipment. Entire ecosystems might already have been charted, entire industries born. Then there's the strange fate of Henry Moray's radiant energy device from the 1920s and 30s. Moray demonstrated a box with no fuel source that powered light bulbs, heaters, and radios using what he called cosmic energy. Over and over, skeptics demanded to inspect it, but Moray never revealed the full design. Witnesses swore it worked, producing kilowatts of power out of nowhere. His lab was vandalized, his notes stolen, and the device vanished with him. Was it fraud or a breakthrough silenced forever? One of the most haunting stories comes from the 19th century, the lost cure for scurvy beyond vitamin C. While citrus fruit solved the problem for sailors, there were reports of herbal remedies that cured advanced cases in days, remedies passed down by indigenous peoples. European explorers wrote of them, then forgot them, and the knowledge disappeared. How many simple but powerful cures have been erased because they didn't fit into the structures of modern medicine? And then there is the tale of superconductors, materials that conduct electricity with zero resistance. Today, they require extreme cold to function. But in the late 1980s, whispers emerged of experiments with ceramics that showed room temperature superconductivity. Patents were filed, results hinted at, and then silence. If room temperature superconductors had been developed, the world's power grids, transportation, and computing systems would already look unrecognizable. Perhaps the most shocking of all was a 19th century invention by John Worrell Keely, who claimed to harness etheric force through sound vibrations. He demonstrated machines that lifted massive weights, ran engines, and shattered materials with resonance alone. Audiences included engineers, scientists, and even financiers like John Jacob Astor. After Keely's death, his workshop revealed mysterious devices no one could fully explain. Was it all illusion, or had he stumbled upon a science of resonance that modern physics still doesn't grasp? And so, as I close this story, remember what you've just heard: real inventions that were born, witnessed, tested, and then erased. Some disappeared in silence, some were buried in secrecy, and others were ridiculed until history forgot them. A car that could run on water. A tower that could have given free electricity to the world. Metals stronger than anything we use today. Devices that healed, machines that defied gravity, energy sources that asked for nothing in return. This is not science fiction. These are fragments of reality, pieces of a timeline that could have been. And the haunting question remains: how many breakthroughs are still hidden right now, locked away, because they threaten the powerful? I am the Apple, and this was AppleKnows. Thank you for listening. Stay curious, and never stop questioning what else might have been taken from the world you live in.